Hey guys, Sean here. What if I told you that the gold that you hold isn't 100% safe and could actually be confiscated by those politicians on Capitol Hill? Now, I know this might be outlandish, but gold has been outlawed multiple times in history before, especially during periods of economic crisis, right? We are now living in a world where inflation is getting out of control, and as the dollar loses more value, gold is increasingly becoming more attractive to own. And this opens up quite a bit of questions about whether your gold could face a confiscation if the US dollar really takes a nosedive to hell. And in this video, I want to discuss further into if outlawing gold is possible today, the precedent set from previous confiscations, and what you can do to protect yourself if the worst case scenario really happens. Let's dive in. Now, gold has been considered money for thousands of years, and once upon a time, every currency through the US dollar was pegged to gold. And that means you could take your US dollars and redeem for gold, and the US government was obligated to honor that request. But while that gold standard allowed money to be honest and inflation was controlled, it put a very big constraint on the US government's ability to control their currency. Golden handcuffs, if you will. So in 1933, the Great Depression happened and the government wanted to print money to solve the economic crisis, right? But they were kind of restricted into how much they could increase the money supplies because gold effectively put a ceiling to their money printing, right? And that's why in April 1933, Roosevelt issued an executive order that outlawed gold by private investors, right? That means no bars, no coins, no bullion, or they could fine you and even throw you in jail. And everyone who wasn't the government had to turn their gold in for US dollars at the rate of $20.67 per ounce. And here's the crazy part, guys. Once they had the gold, they immediately changed the price of gold to $35 an ounce, right? So this really allowed them to print more devalued dollars to fight the depression, but it effectively robbed gold investors of their purchasing power. The dollars they held from the gold was devalued by 40% with a single stroke, right? And this outlaw of gold didn't just happen only in the United States, right? Britain did the same in 1966 when the pound had a currency crisis, and Australia made it legal to seize gold from their private citizens in exchange for paper money in 1959. So the reality of a gold confiscation is very real and has happened before in history. That's why many investors today, myself included, are right to worry if our governments can really seize our gold, especially today as a currency crisis is just around the corner. Fiat currency is all a confidence game and gold is seen as a competitor whether the Federal Reserve admits it or not, right? Every time the price of gold rises, it reflects poorly on the dollar and really shows the weakness of paper money, right? How can something that can be printed into infinity actually hold value for the long term? And that is why you can see countries like Poland and Germany bringing their gold back home from the US and the London vaults. This is why countries like China and Russia are buying tons of gold. They won't say it out loud, but they don't trust the dollar, right? And actions always speaks louder than words. Even Texas wants their gold back from New York because they don't trust the Federal Reserve to be responsible. They believe the Fed will essentially continue to print money forever and ever, right? It's hilarious and scary at the same time. Now, although governments can do whatever they want, I believe that a gold confiscation today is highly unlikely. And it's because of three reasons, right? Firstly, governments are no longer tied to gold and they can print as much money as they want, right? You see, ever since Nixon destroyed the gold standard in 1971, every currency in the world today is free floating and effectively just backed by trust. There's little need to confiscate something that is no longer necessary to control their currencies, right? And secondly, if governments even tried to confiscate gold today, they will be digging their own graves and undermining confidence in fiat currencies. Just think about it, right? With a 7% inflation rate today, people are already panicking about their purchasing power evaporating into thin air, right? So if Congress suddenly decides to confiscate or exchange your gold for dollars, it will immediately send confidence in the dollar falling into the deepest level of hell, right? Outlawing gold will only justify its existence even more. And it's really easy to see what people will do, right? You don't need to be a rocket scientist to really see what's going to happen. There will likely be a stampede of investors cashing out of their bonds, moving away from dollars, and buying every hard asset known to man. And finally, not many people today own gold or even are serious about owning gold, right? You know, mainstream media is all about the stock market, and even in today's environment, we hear from the experts that we should keep like what, 10 to 15% in gold. But just ask around your family and friends if they hold gold, right? You know, I bet you will get that deer in the headlights look and people scratching their head like monkeys. You will hear more about Bitcoin and cryptos than gold, whether you watch the TV or browse the internet, right? That's why, although it is possible for governments to really confiscate gold, I believe they won't bother confiscating it because it's just not worth the hassle. However, as investors and gold stackers, we need to prepare for the worst, guys. We need to prepare for the worst. What if the unthinkable happens and they do come for your gold? How will they do it, right? You know, after all, the US government has set a precedent in the past, and if they do it once, they could do it again. And here's the reality. It is likely that they will not just outright come into your home, turn it upside down, and shake you like the mafia and confiscate your gold, right? You know, a law could be passed just like in 1933 to outlaw private ownership of gold, and citizens will have to surrender their gold to the government, right? It will likely be an exchange of your bullion for dollars based on gold's market value, and they might even pay you a premium to incentivize you to do so. However, I have to say that this is highly unlikely, because if they do so, they have just admitted to the whole world that they trust gold more than their own US dollars. And trust and belief that other central banks in the world are silently watching what the US government is doing, right? If China and Russia sees that the US have lost faith in their own currency, guess what they're most probably going to do? They're going to dump the US dollars and buy more gold. Now, the more likely scenario is that the government might just tax the hell out of gold on both the front and the back end, right? You know, currently certain states in the US, such as Vermont, has already imposed a sales tax on gold, and they could just extend it across the United States. And they could also increase the capital gains when it comes to gold. You know, instead of the standard 28% tax, they could just jack it up to 40% or even 50%. But that would just be shooting themselves in their own foot if they raise taxes, right? You know, people will likely buy and hold physical gold and just directly trade and even barter stuff with them, right? People aren't stupid, and eventually they will find loopholes to exploit. So let's say they really come for your gold, you know, execute order 66. What can you do? The first way is to store your gold overseas in countries that have high economic freedom, right? Which is defined as the fundamental right of every human to control his or her own labor, property, and invest how they want, right? It becomes harder for governments to seize your gold if they decide to do a nationwide confiscation if you store it overseas, right? And when it comes to gold storage, I believe two countries top the list: Switzerland and Singapore. You know, the Swiss have a history of storing gold for wealthy families, countries, and they even handled Nazi gold during World War II, right? Yeah, dark stuff indeed, but it shows you that Switzerland is really a neutral country that is all about storing and securing financial assets like gold. In fact, over 70% of the world's gold is refined in Switzerland, and it makes little sense for the Swiss government to go around confiscating gold, right? They will lose their status as a hub for gold. But the best place, hands down, the number one place to store gold is in Singapore. The city-state where I'm from is essentially the financial capital of Asia, right? A lot of money flows into the country, and they are world-class vaults filled with gold that any secret agent will have trouble breaking into. What's great is that there isn't really any sales tax or capital gains tax on gold in Singapore. The government is stable, corruption is very low, and crime is near zero, which makes it the ultimate place to store gold. So if you're in the States or in countries where governments have confiscated gold before, such as the UK, Australia, you might want to consider storing gold in Switzerland or Singapore. But let's say you really don't want to store your gold overseas, but you still want to have some safety from a confiscation, right? Now, the next best way is to get some gold jewelry, guys. That's why I'm wearing this gold chain today. There's a reason why I have quite a bit of chains, and I even have a Cuban link gold bracelet, and that's because the last time I checked, gold jewelry isn't considered a financial asset, right? And it's something that governments won't even dream of confiscating, right? This allows you to stack gold without the need to report to the government about your purchases. So even though there's a higher premium when it comes to buying gold jewelry, I believe it's a good move, right? You know, you could always get yourself a chain, a ring, or a bracelet to really diversify your gold holdings. And I believe that it will be highly unlikely any government with the rule of law will come for your gold jewelry, right? Just remember not to overpay for your jewelry, and anything more than 50% above the spot price for gold jewelry is too high in my opinion. Now, because of this confiscation scenario, a lot of dealers and coin shops might try to scare you into buying numismatic gold, right? You know, I can't stand fear mongers, especially the ones who try to rip people of their money. And the problem with numismatic gold is that the premiums are astoundingly high compared to normal bullion coins. You could be paying double the spot price of gold for some rare coins. For example, the $20 St. Gaudens Double Eagle could go for over $3,000 today, depending on the dates, even though the price of gold is around $1,800, right? It doesn't make financial sense. And the truth is that if the government wants, they can also seize your rare coins and you are back to square one. So unless you are a collector or you really want to start investing in rare numismatic coins, it is a justified decision that you come on your own. You should stay away from rare gold coins. Now, I don't really want us to fear a gold confiscation, right? Just because there's a threat of gold being outlawed doesn't mean you shouldn't invest in gold. Remember guys, the gold market today is too big to be controlled, and if any government does something as stupid as a gold confiscation, other countries will take notice of this and they will start piling even more gold, right? They'll be effectively announcing to the whole world that the dollar is dying and that rule of law has left the country. So how many nations do you think would then want to invest or even do business with a country that confiscates financial assets, right? You know, this will just drive up the price of gold, and if you aren't invested yet, you might be paying much more down the road, right? So you see, it's not worth it for any government to enforce a confiscation. Just imagine, right, the public outcry and the loss of revenue trying to mobilize their stormtroopers to get people to comply. And truth be told, many people today aren't patriotic anymore, and we aren't stupid, right? At the first sign of trouble, you can always store your gold in vaults in countries with greater economic freedom like Singapore. There's always a way out, right? So while it's still legal to buy gold today, I personally will continue to stack gold for a long time to come. So there you have it guys. I believe that a confiscation is highly unlikely, and that shouldn't deter you from investing in gold. You know, there are very few investment classes out there that can protect your purchasing power, right? Especially today when the dollar is being printed into oblivion. The real threat to the government fiat money today is cryptocurrencies, right? Bitcoin, because it allows for huge sums of wealth to be transferred internationally without any restrictions, right? The only way I believe that gold will be confiscated is if a global reset happens and every nation is going back to the gold standard. But I find that scenario very unlikely because at the end of the day, governments want to control their own currency, which gold prevents, right? And if they shine too big a spotlight on gold, they will only be shooting themselves in the foot. So do you think a gold confiscation could actually happen, or are we getting too paranoid here? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more gold and silver videos. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon.